Okay, we're moving on. Unit 15, work effectively in business continuity context, lesson 5, PowerPoint part 5. Okay, responding to risk. PowerPoint part 5. Okay, let's continue. So, slide number 2, risk treatment. Risk is an unavoidable element in any business. Today, businesses are exposed to a number of risks, such as financial risk, operational risk, policy risk, political risk, legal risk, regulatory risk, exchange rate risk, liquidity risk, interest risk, systematic risk. Now, I need you to take 10 minutes. Stop the video right here, okay? And I need you to look up what each one of these risks are, okay? So write down what a financial risk is, operational risk, policy risk, political risk, legal risk, regulatory risk, exchange rate risk, liquidity risk, interest rate risk, and systematic risk. I'll be giving you a quiz later on these risks, so make sure you know what they are. So take some time right now, stop the video again, and research each one of these risks. Spend the next 10 to 15 minutes. I'll give you 15 minutes to complete this assignment. Okay, let's continue. All right. So you just had an opportunity to look up what some of these risks are, right? So you're supposed to look up these risks and put into context what they mean, okay, as we go through the next set of this lesson. Slide number 3, risk treatment. Risk management involves responding to risk in advance through pre-planning and devising an organization-wide strategy to address different types of risk faced by nowadays domestic and global business organizations. Various components of risk treatment, including emergency response strategies, are as follows: activating evacuation plan, activating lockdown procedures, activating workplace emergency management plan, relocation of facilities, resource replacement, suspending activities temporarily. Okay, so these are some of the treatments. When we're talking about risk treatments, is a plan. What's the solution? We're talking about the solution, right? So activating an evacuation plan, for example, if there's a fire, the best plan for a fire is to leave the building. Do we agree on that? Yes or no? I kind of agree. If there's a fire, we should leave the building. So we will activate an evacuation plan, okay? Activating a lockdown procedure. So lockdown procedure is if there is an intruder that comes in, okay, you may want to lock down the facility in order to stop someone from getting out, or you may want to lock down a facility to prevent someone from going in. Okay, so even right now at the college, they probably have some lockdown procedures. They're probably not going to let you in unless there is an emergency or some sort of very important reason why you need to get in. So at this point, the college is on lockdown. They activated a lockdown procedure. Activating workplace emergency management plan, okay, is any kind of workplace emergency that can happen. Whatever that plan is activating that plan. Relocation of facilities. In some instances, you may need to relocate where something is going to happen. So instead of having the university at the college, maybe they'll move it somewhere else to a hotel, conference center or something, okay? So that's called relocation facilities. Resource replacement, things may have gotten destroyed or something like that, and you'll have to use a different resource. Okay, so if you were using a laptop, for example, every day, then you might have to use your phone to connect to the internet, if you don't have a laptop, for example. Resource replacement. Suspending activities temporarily. As it is happening right now at the college, we have suspended students and teachers from attending the college, right? So there is a suspension of activities temporarily, meaning it's not forever. It's going to just be for a while until they come to a solution for this situation. Slide number 4. Activating evacuation plan. An evacuation plan involves emergency procedures in the event of a contingency which requires evacuation of people to safety from a part of the whole of the premise at the point of safety, either on or off such premises. Evacuation activation planning is vital in case of an emergency, which may turn fatal to the life of people working or inhabiting a building or premise. An evacuation plan comprises of procedures such as emergency exit procedures, exit routine, location of protective gear or protect from fire hazards, chemicals, etc. So in an evacuation plan, if there's an emergency, the contingency plan, which is the backup plan for safety, right? There are different types of ways you can respond to an emergency, right? So one of those ways is to evacuate, which we talked about is to leave. Evacuation, the word evacuate, please write it down. Hopefully you have your pen, your paper, your pencil, your notebook, and you are writing, okay? So evacuation, EVACUATION. If you don't know what that word means, stop right now and go and look it up. All right, evacuation plan. All right, so you want to evacuate, which is to leave a situation, a building or something, exit, all right, exit the location to solve a problem. All right, slide number 5. General evacuation procedures. General procedures calling for safety personnel by a person who is a witness to the triggering event. Safety personnel initiates the evacuation plan after calling for help on the emergency response numbers. People caught in such situations are encouraged to remain calm. Safety personnel sounds alarm to inform the campus premise community of the emergency situation and steps to be taken. So the general evacuation procedures is that you're calling for safety. You want to make sure that if you, for example, if there's a fire, keep going back to the fire because it's like the easiest one to you make up an example. Okay, so who do we call if there's a fire? We'll call the firefighters, and the firefighters will come and they would out the fire. Okay, so it's just a matter of, I want you to think about this as steps. Okay, think about this as, what do you do in the event of an emergency? Okay, and there are many types of emergencies. As you can see, this is an emergency. When you have a virus that's going around, they had to make an alternative plan, and they used, this backup plan to come to the to work from home. All right, to study from home. All right, slide number 6, general procedures. So campus premises must be exited from the nearest exit quickly. Leave the premise as quickly as possible by quickly grabbing what is available at hand. Reach quickly to the safety counter and wait for instructions. Report to the safety personnel the location and condition of the people still trapped. All right, so this is why when we have a fire drill or a fire alarm goes off at the college, we ask you, please report to the assembly point. And at that time, you see, I take attendance all the time. So when you do not show up, I have to report you're missing. I have to report you're missing because there might be a problem where you may be trapped and then emergency personnel have to go and collect you. Now, let's say you're just hiding and you don't want to come out for the fire alarm, for example. Then you're putting people's lives at risk, right? Because then the fire person has to go in and get you. And the truth is, you're not hurt, right? So this is why if there's a fire alarm, we all exit the building. We meet at the assembly point. I take attendance. You are accounted for. I don't have to report you. Okay? And this way, we do not put other people's lives at risk. All right? So all these things are procedures and policies we should follow. And as you can see, these are the things that makes for a business continuity plan. Okay? Now, let's take this a little further. If this was, if this was an earthquake, for example, where the whole building was shaking or something, and we all had to leave the building, we had to evacuate, right? Which means to leave, to exit. So if we had to evacuate because there's an earthquake and maybe some rubble, all right, so some structures fell or something like that, trapping an individual, that is what we're talking about, okay? We have to know the safety conditions of the people trapped inside, okay? All right, slide number 7. Common sources of emergencies. Common sources of emergencies on which emergency action plans are prepared, okay, are as the following. So this is why you would need a plan. For a fire, for an explosion, for a flood, for a hurricane, for a tornado, for toxic material releases, for radiological and biological accidents, for violence at work, and civil disturbances like communal riots, okay? So there has to be emergency plans in place, all right, for these types of activities, okay? Okay, I'll let you take another 10 to 15 minutes here, okay? Stop the video. Just go ahead and pause it after I give you the instructions, of course. And I want you to write down now, like, what is the best plan for any of these, for at least 3 or 4 of these emergency situations? What is the best emergency plan for 3 or 4 of the following emergency situations that I just told you about? So you can write on the best emergency plan for a fire or explosion, flood, hurricane, tornado, toxic materials releases, radiological and or biological accidents, violence at the workplace, civil disturbances such as communal riots. Spend 15 minutes right now and take a break and write down what is a plan that you will put in place for 3 or 4 of these. It'll be interesting to see what you come up with. Okay, welcome back. I hope that you were able to take 15 minutes to go ahead and create an action plan for the following, okay? Now, if you were to say, for example, let's go over a few. If there was a flood, okay, what emergency plan would you have prepared for that? What did you have? Did you think about if there was a flood? Now, if there was a flood, an emergency plan could probably be, all right, flooding. What is flooding? So flooding is a rushing in of water, okay? So if there's water all outside, like very deep, it's going too much, okay? Maybe the best thing to do is to go higher, okay? So maybe you go to the top of the building, the top of the house. As you can see, when there was some severe flooding in some of these regions where the hurricane had passed, for example, when there was Hurricane Katrina, you would see that people moved to the roof and they were sitting on the roof, okay, as a backup plan for flooding. Because in flooding, a person could drown, right? Because it's very deep, all right? And then there's other obstacles and objects that's in the water as well, too. So these are some of the things you have to think about. So hopefully you came up with a few ideas of your own about what plans you would put in place for emergencies, okay? Let's move on. Slide number 8, activating lockdown procedures. Again, a lockdown situation protects the people in a building premise from internal and external threats to body or life of people. All entry and exit points are sealed off and movement within the building premise is restricted and activities are closely monitored through camera surveillance. People present in such building premise as a standard operating procedure, SOP. Please write that down, standard operating procedure, SOP. Again, we are on Unit 15, part number 5, slide number 8. Okay. We're talking about SOP, standard operating procedures, are advised to stay in place, which means these people caught in an emergency situation are required to stay confined in designated protected areas which provide protection from weather situations, civil disturbances, or any other emergency situation warranting a lockdown. Okay? Warranting a lockdown. So they advise people to stay in place. So when we start talking about a lockdown, we're asking that people stay where they are. They're locked down. Okay? And this would prevent either people from going in or people from coming out. All right? So if there was I don't know. Again, like right now, the facility is locked down, right? The college is locked down. You probably cannot just get in, all right, or out. Maybe, out, in and out, just like that. Like you'll have to have a specific reason or something, but there's no way it's on lockdown. No one can enter and no one can exit, meaning that people have to stay where they are. They have to stay in place, okay? All right, slide number 9. A plan to respond in workplace in the event of an emergency situation. A workplace emergency is an unpredictable situation which poses a threat to your employees, property, customers, or the public, disrupts or shuts down your operations, or causes physical or environmental damage. In order to avoid the loss of life, bodily harm to people, or damage to property, the best way to prepare in advance for an emergency which may arise due to a emergency situation. Okay, so a plan to respond in workplace in the event of any emergency situation. A workplace emergency is unpredictable. We don't want emergencies to happen at work. We don't want emergencies to happen anywhere, basically, okay? We don't want these things, but we have to plan for it because people could get hurt. All right? We don't want, but it may happen and it can happen. And so therefore, this is why we have to be putting these plans in place. Okay, slide number 10. Due to the fact being that only a few people can think rationally and logically at the time of a crisis, it is better to be ready with a plan carefully devised in advance. A well-devised plan must include the following: a primary method of reporting fire and other emergencies, an evacuation policy and procedure, emergency escape route procedures such as flood plans, building layouts, refuge areas, workplace maps, names, titles, departments, and contact information of individuals both within and outside the workplace premises to seek additional help in times of need. Okay, so the thing is, when there's an emergency, if there's an emergency right now, you can't really think. Okay, it's not the time to do the thinking. It's time to do the acting, the responding, right? So what they're saying is that you don't want to think of the plan when the emergency happens. You want to think of the plan before the emergency happens. Because in the event of an emergency, you're not thinking. You're just responding. You don't want to be panicked. You don't want to be confused. All right, think about something happening and everybody's just confused and panicked because they don't know what's happening, right? So you want to make sure that you are not confused and panicked and stressed out and You will be those things. Those things will happen when there's an emergency. But the thing is, you want to make sure that you have a plan. So this way it's you move quickly, and you're not thinking, you're moving based on, an idea that's already planned out, and everybody's not confused. If something is happening and people are crying, and if there's an earthquake and people are hurt, you're not thinking at that point. You're not thinking, right? So you want to make sure there's a plan in place. So if you're crying and hysterical, that the plan could still move forward, even if you're not comprehending what's happening. Okay? All right. Slide number 11. Ladies, you're doing great. Stay with me. Hang in there. I know it's rough. I'm going to keep moving forward. All right. We're on Unit 15, Part 5. Slide number 11. A well-devised plan must include the following elements: operating procedures and instructions for personnel who stay behind to perform or shut down critical plant operations, operate fire extinguishers, rescue operations to be performed by the personnel assigned, medical duties for any workers designated to perform them. Okay, so all the instructions need to be there. Slide number 12, relocation of facilities. The meaning of the phrase relocation of facilities is the change of the location of specialized facilities, workplace, buildings, primarily for the reason of heavy damage or such other after effects of an emergency situation. Relocation of facilities is required to maintain the continuity of business. Slide number 13. Relocation of facilities is undertaken as a post-crisis measure in the following situations: inaccessibility, when the workplace facility becomes inaccessible due to obstruction in the pathways as the result of the disruption due to emergency; damage, where a specialized facility, research facility, or a workplace has suffered damages as a result of emergency situation. Relocation is required. Building and office premise damage due to fire, flood, or earthquake. Crime scene, relocation of a crime scene to protect the integrity of the crime scene evidence. All right, so more on the facilities. So the facilities is the place where something is happening, right? So you may need to move your functioning business somewhere else. If there's a flood in a place, Rashid Mall, there's a flood, maybe everybody goes to Dahan Mall. Okay, we move the stores to another mall. All right, because there's a major flood, the whole thing is messed up, so they need to move the location. There's damages. All right, or if there's a crime. So those are some of the reasons why you may need to move facilities or move location. Number 14, page 14, counseling. So after a disaster, usually you would need to provide people with counseling. So a business depends on its people, processes, and technology. In the event of happening of an incident, you must provide space, comfort, and connectivity to recover your line of business. Counseling must be done for employers and their families to address any stress or trauma built up after the incident. Some employees may not even return to work to resume their duties and must be placed with employees of relevant or higher skills and talent level. So after an emergency, there must be some counseling, okay, that will occur. So before we continue, we have a few more slides. I want to take a minute here and give you an opportunity to look at a situation, okay? Do you guys remember when there was a plane in the Hudson River and it went down into the river? I want you to take a look at that situation, okay? I'm gonna post a video. You take a look at that situation, and then think about why people would need some counseling after that situation. What measures would they need to take so that people can return to work, that the passengers can move on with their lives after this very tragic event? You're on a plane, you're traveling somewhere, the plane is now crashing into the water. Okay, many planes crash and they don't recover, but this one, people survived. So the survivors, okay, crash into the water and they survive. Now something has happened. We need to provide counseling. Let's take a look at this incident and write down your thoughts. Spend 5 minutes writing down your thoughts.